My sister slapped my daughter across the face at a family brunch, and my parents laughed. That's how it started. In front of a dozen relatives, my 6-year-old daughter was humiliated simply for singing for being joyful. And no one flinched. No one said a word. But what they didn't know was that the microphone in the chandelier was recording. This isn't just a story about one slap, it's about what happens when the cycle of silence breaks. If you've ever felt like the black sheep in your family, if you've ever been told to keep the peace at the cost of your own dignity, or if you're a parent trying to raise your child with the love you never got, then this story is for you. Because it's not just about betrayal. It's about boundaries, about truth, and about choosing to become the protector you once needed. Stay with me to the end, because this journey from pain to power may help you find the words you've been too afraid to say. And if this resonates, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more real stories about healing, family, and finding your voice. My name is Rachel, and for most of my life, I've been told to stay quiet, to smile, to not make things uncomfortable. I was the spirited child in a family that valued silence over self-expression. My older sister Vanessa was the golden girl, graceful, polished, always saying the right thing at the right time. She got the praise, the attention, the protection. I got the lectures, the comparisons, and the silent treatment when I dared to be different. And now, years later, I see the same pattern trying to repeat itself, only this time, the target isn't me. It's my daughter. Emma is 6 years old. Bright, loud, kind, and full of joy. She sings everywhere, in the car, in the bath, while brushing her teeth. Her voice fills our little apartment like sunshine through the windows, and as her mom, I've always promised myself I would protect that light. I would never let anyone silence her the way I had been silenced. But then the invitation came. A sleek, overly cheerful email from Vanessa, titled Carter Family Legacy Weekend. She had organized a weekend retreat at her lakefront vacation home, complete with catered meals, a professional videographer, and a schedule packed with bonding activities. On paper, it looked like a dream. In reality, I knew better. My first instinct was to delete the email and move on. But before I could, Emma peeked over my shoulder, saw the photo of the lake house, and whispered, "Mom, is that a castle? Can we go?" Her eyes were full of wonder. She'd never been to a real lake house. Never spent a weekend with cousins and grandparents all in one place. So I said yes, not because I believed things would be different, but because I didn't want to disappoint her. I packed carefully. Her favorite dresses, her crayons, her stuffed bunny Maple. And I packed my own emotional armor too, the quiet voice in my head that kept saying, "Stay calm, don't react, just get through it." Even my best friend Lena wasn't convinced. "Vanessa's not doing this for the family," she warned me over coffee. "She's doing it for the cameras, for her image." I wanted to believe otherwise. I wanted to believe maybe my sister had changed. That maybe we could move forward. I was wrong. The drive to the lake house took nearly 4 hours. Emma sang the whole way, making up songs about the trees and the sky. I smiled, but my grip on the steering wheel tightened as we got closer. The house was massive, white, modern, pristine. 2 Teslas and a Range Rover in the driveway. Someone had even hired a valet. Vanessa met us at the door wearing linen pants and gold sandals. She smiled like it hurt her face. "Rachel," she said, "you made it." Then she knelt to Emma's level and added, "And this must be the little songbird." Emma lit up. "I practiced a song for everyone." Vanessa blinked just for a second, then said, "How lovely." Inside, it was exactly what I expected. Cold perfection. Our parents, Gerald and Marilyn, sat in the living room like royalty, drinks already in hand. My Aunt Bev was whispering gossip. My Uncle Don was talking over everyone. The place was wired with hidden microphones, apparently for the filmmaker Vanessa hired to make a highlight reel of the weekend. A family sizzle reel. Like a reality show? I joked. Her husband Mark chuckled, but I could tell he was tired. He handled the tech. Vanessa handled the performance. Our room? A windowless mudroom with a cot. No one even pretended it wasn't an insult. But Emma didn't care, she just wanted to play with her cousins. She didn't know that in this family, joy wasn't welcome unless it came from the right people. Dinner the first night was exactly what you'd expect from Vanessa: long banquet tables, fairy lights, fancy name cards. We were seated at the far end, next to the kids and the less important cousins. Vanessa sat in the middle, next to our parents and her VIP guests, donors, board members, and her husband's medical colleagues. Emma wore her yellow sundress and kept trying to join conversations. She complimented earrings, talked about frogs, even offered to sing. No one paid attention. My mom told her, "Let the grown-ups talk." My dad went on and on about Vanessa's upcoming TEDx talk on legacy and leadership. Emma leaned toward me and asked, "Why does Grandma only talk to Aunt Vanessa?" I squeezed her hand and said, "Because sometimes grown-ups forget how to share attention." She nodded like she understood more than she should. That night, she drew a picture of our family but placed us off to the side, away from everyone else. "They don't want us in the middle," she said. My heart broke a little. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't lie. And that was just the beginning. I didn't know it yet, but this legacy weekend was about to become a turning point, not just for me, but for Emma. Because this time, when the family tried to dim the light in her, I was finally ready to stand in the way. The next morning, the house looked just as perfect, but the tension had started to crack beneath the surface. Waffles were served, music played through hidden speakers, and Vanessa floated from guest to guest, all smiles and fake laughter. Mark moved quietly behind the scenes, adjusting microphones and cameras. Emma clung to her coloring book, dressed in her pink cardigan, her cheeks already rosy with excitement. As we stepped into the great room for brunch, she tugged at my hand and whispered, "Can I sing today?" The new song I made up. I hesitated. My instincts screamed to protect her, to keep her quiet in the corners where it was safer. But then I saw her face. Hopeful, brave, unafraid. I nodded and said, "Just wait for the right moment." She smiled wide and skipped off to the kids' table. As the adults sipped mimosas and chatted over quiche, Emma's voice began to rise above the clinking glasses, soft, sweet, a melody about stars and sunshine. At first, no one noticed. But then I saw Vanessa's eyes twitch. She turned slightly toward the sound, forced a smile, and tried to continue her conversation with my dad. Emma, unaware, kept singing. She was just being herself, joyful and free. But her voice got a little louder, full of confidence and that magical childhood boldness. Vanessa's expression shifted. She stood, her chair screeching back across the wood floor. The room quieted slightly. She walked straight toward Emma, fast and stiff, like she was walking into a boardroom, not approaching a child. Then, without warning, she raised her hand and slapped Emma across the face. It happened so fast I couldn't even move. Emma's crayon dropped, her hand flew to her cheek. Her eyes widened with shock and confusion. Then came the words, loud and clear. "Like mother, like daughter. Both are useless." Vanessa laughed, not nervously, but proudly. My father leaned back in his chair, nodding. "She needed to learn some shame," he said. My mother didn't even look up from her drink. I didn't think. I just moved. Crossed the room, scooped Emma into my arms. Her face was flushed, her body trembling, her voice reduced to little hiccups. I turned toward them all: Vanessa, my parents, every cousin, aunt, and uncle who had just watched in silence, and said, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Because what they didn't realize, what they had completely forgotten, was that the microphone hidden in the chandelier had been on the entire time. Everything: the slap, the insult, the laughter — had been recorded. The silence in the room shifted. No longer awkward, it was electric. Mark stood frozen in the corner, still holding a remote. I locked eyes with him. "Is the mic still recording?" I asked, calm but clear. He gave the faintest nod. Vanessa turned pale. "What are you talking about?" she said, trying to laugh it off. But I kept my eyes on Mark. "The documentary mic," I said. "You told me it records natural family moments. Ambient audio, right?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His hand moved slowly toward the receiver, unplugging it without a word. Vanessa panicked. "Mark, don't you dare." But he didn't look at her. Not once. I left with Emma before the sun had even passed the trees. No one stopped us. Not a single person. Emma sat in the back seat, quietly humming pieces of the song she never got to finish. Her cheeks were still red. I tried not to cry. I wasn't running away. I was choosing a different path, one where my daughter would never have to beg for kindness. We went straight to Lena's. She opened the door before I even knocked. No questions, just a hug, hot tea, and her handing me a blank notebook. "Let's map this out," she said. And that's exactly what we did. I took Emma to a pediatrician the next morning. The doctor noted the faint red mark on her cheek. Then we saw a child therapist. Emma sat with her bunny and spoke softly. "She said my singing was bad," she said. Then she hit me. Then she laughed. The therapist looked at me. "She's showing signs of acute humiliation. It's good you brought her in early." I added the medical report to a growing folder. Back at Lena's, I opened my laptop. Vanessa had spent years building a flawless image: nonprofit director, public speaker, child confidence advocate. Her LinkedIn was full of glowing posts about safe spaces and creative self-expression. I stared at those words while holding the USB Mark had given me. I didn't feel rage. I felt resolve. I wrote 3 emails. One to the board of her nonprofit, one to the school district where she worked as a liaison, one to the Youth Mentorship Summit where she was set to be a keynote speaker next month. Each email was short, professional. I attached the edited audio clip: the slap, the insult, the laugh, my father's words about shame. No commentary, no demands, just truth. I wrote, "As someone concerned about the emotional safety of children, I felt ethically obligated to share this recording." Then I clicked send. And waited. The first reply came less than 24 hours later. It was from the board chair of the nonprofit where Vanessa served as executive director. The email was formal, cautious. "We've received a concerning report," it read. "Are you the mother in the attached audio?" I replied yes. "And the child?" they asked. "Is she your daughter?" Another yes. Then came a pause in the email thread, the kind you can feel even through a screen. Finally, the message returned. "Vanessa has been placed on administrative leave pending further review. We will be issuing a public statement shortly." By mid-afternoon, her photo was quietly removed from the Regional Arts and Schools Initiative's website. By evening, the Mentorship Summit updated their homepage: a new speaker listed in her slot, her name nowhere in sight. And I hadn't posted a single word publicly. No hashtags, no rage. Just the raw audio and the simple truth: someone who claimed to nurture children had slapped a child for singing and laughed. That night, the texts started. First from Vanessa. Then my mother. Vanessa's was sharp and panicked. "You're ruining everything I've built." My mother's was colder. "This is family business. You didn't have to go public." More messages came in rapid bursts. "You think this makes you a hero? You're bitter, just like always. Take it down before it gets worse." But I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The sound of Emma's voice humming softly in the other room was enough. I didn't want revenge. I wanted change. And for the first time in my life, I had stopped asking for permission to speak. In the days that followed, there was no big explosion. No screaming match, just quiet consequences. The nonprofit issued a short, measured statement. "We're committed to creating safe environments for all children. In light of recent concerns, Miss Carter has been placed on indefinite leave." It was clinical, but it was final. Her credibility, built on years of staged smiles and perfect optics, was unraveling with the truth. At home, Emma began to sing again. Quietly at first in the bathtub, in the hallway, little songs with strange rhymes and soft melodies. One night, while brushing her teeth, she sang the same song she hadn't finished that awful day at the lake house. I didn't cry in front of her. I waited until I stepped into the hallway, leaned against the wall, and let the tears fall silently. Not from pain, from relief, from knowing she still had her light. Then something I never expected began to happen. The phone rang again, not from Vanessa, not from my parents, but from other relatives. My cousin Jules called. Her voice was quiet. "I was sitting 3 chairs away," she said. "I saw the whole thing. I should have said something. I'm sorry. My uncle Nate sent an email. Years ago, I saw Vanessa push my son for being too loud. I didn't speak up. I regret that now." Even Aunt Bev, who usually only called to gossip, left a voicemail. "I used to think Vanessa was just stern, but now I think I watched her become your father." Those words hit hard. I didn't forgive everyone instantly. Some I didn't answer at all. But for the first time, the silence wasn't mine to carry alone. Other people were finally noticing the cracks. Cracks they had ignored for years because it was easier. Lena, as always, was steady. She hosted a dinner one Friday night. Just a small group, the people she called your real family. Emma helped bake cornbread. Mark came too, alone. He brought a sketch pad for Emma, who beamed as she opened it. He looked me in the eye. "I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner," he said. I nodded. "You did the most important thing," I told him. "You turned on the mic." That evening, as laughter filled the apartment and plates were passed across the table, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: warmth without conditions. No one was trying to correct Emma's voice or dim her joy. She belonged. We both did. And then, just before dessert, she tugged my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, "can I sing now?" I froze. Part fear, part awe. "Only if you want to," I said gently. She nodded. I practiced. She stepped onto the living room rug like it was a stage. Everyone quieted. And then she sang. Not a cartoon song or nursery rhyme, this one was her own. A melody about strong hearts and stars that shine, even when the clouds try to hide them. Her voice was soft at first. Then stronger. Steady. Sure. I didn't cry until she finished. But when I did, it wasn't sadness. It was joy, raw and healing. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the apartment was full of that special kind of quiet that only comes after laughter, my phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. Just 2 words. "You win." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Because this was never about winning. It was about breaking the cycle. The cycle that told girls to sit down, be quiet, don't cause trouble. The one that said family meant putting up with anything, even cruelty, just to keep the peace. The one that punished joy and protected the people who hurt others the most. Vanessa had tried to shame Emma into silence. My parents had watched and done nothing. But that day, they taught me something they never intended to, that the title of family means nothing if it doesn't come with protection, with presence, with love. And now, Emma would grow up knowing that her voice is a gift, not a problem. That being loud isn't rude, that being different isn't wrong. She would grow up watching her mother stand up, not shrink down. And maybe one day, when she faces her own crossroads, she'll remember this, not the slap, but the strength. Not the silence, but the sound. Because we don't build new legacies by repeating the old ones. We build them by listening, by speaking, by showing up. And sometimes, we build them with crayons and songs and a voice that refuses to disappear. A few days after that message from Vanessa, the one I deleted without hesitation, my mother called. Again. This time her voice was clipped, her tone brittle like glass under pressure. "We need to talk," she said. I waited. "About what?" I asked, knowing exactly what she'd say. "You've torn this family apart." I let out a quiet laugh. Not cruel, just clear. "No, Mom. I just refused to keep taping it back together." She hung up. And in that moment, with the dial tones still humming in my ear, I felt it, a kind of release. The invisible weight I'd carried since childhood, finally slipping off my shoulders. I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel like the problem. I felt like someone who had finally, fully, stood up. 6 weeks passed. During that time, I did things I never imagined I'd have the strength to do. I enrolled Emma in a local art and music class. Nothing fancy, just Saturday mornings at the community center. The first time she stepped into that room, she looked at me and whispered, "Do I have to be quiet here?" I shook my head. "No, sweetie. Here, they want you to be loud." That class became her sanctuary. Each week, she painted, played, and sang with kids who didn't look at her like she was too much. Her teacher, Miss Chloe, once pulled me aside and said, "She has this fire in her. This confidence I rarely see in kids her age. Don't let anyone dim that." I nodded, fighting tears. "I won't," I promised. Meanwhile, I started writing. Not publicly. Just for me. Pages and pages poured out memories I hadn't dared revisit, truths I'd tucked into corners for decades. I wrote about growing up in a house where silence was mistaken for peace. About how Vanessa learned early to perform perfection, while I learned to survive invisibility. About how my parents confused obedience with love. I didn't write to get even. I wrote to understand. And I began therapy. Real, honest therapy. Not a journal in secret, not a friend over coffee, but a trained professional who looked me in the eye and said, "You are not responsible for how they chose to love you." That single sentence cracked something open in me. I'd spent so long trying to earn affection, to explain myself, to prove I wasn't difficult or dramatic. But I wasn't broken, I was conditioned to believe love had to hurt. Emma flourished during those weeks. Her voice returned fully. Not just the singing, but the laughter, the silly made-up words, the storytelling. One night she sat beside me on the couch and asked, "Do you think the stars can hear us?" I smiled. "I think they hear you best when you sing." She leaned her head on my shoulder. Then I'll never stop singing. It was that same week I decided to host something I never thought I would, a celebration. Not for revenge. Not to make a point. But to mark the end of something old and the beginning of something new. I called it a thank you gathering. No formal invites, just a message to the people who had shown up when it mattered. Lena was the first to arrive, carrying her famous peach pie. Emma practically danced at the door when she saw her. Mark came next, with his son, a quiet boy with kind eyes who brought Emma a handmade card. Aunt Bev and Cousin Jules came with flowers, juice boxes, and nervous smiles. Even Dr. Harris, Emma's therapist, dropped by for a few minutes, just long enough to say, "You're doing everything right." We didn't need decorations or speeches. The apartment was filled with something far more powerful presence, people listening without interrupting. People laughing without mocking. Emma wore a blue dress that flared when she spun, and she'd placed tiny star stickers on her cheeks like freckles. She ran around the room, proud, radiant, whole. Then, near the end of the evening, she came up to me. "Mom," she whispered, "can I sing something?" I looked at her, eyes wide, heart full. "Only if you want to," I said gently. She nodded with certainty. "I do." I practiced. Everyone fell quiet. Emma stepped into the center of the room. No stage, no microphone, just her. She opened her mouth and began to sing. This time, it wasn't the song from before. It was something new. A melody of hope. Of stars still shining even when clouds tried to hide them. Of strong hearts and voices that won't be quiet anymore. Her voice was soft at first, but grew stronger with each note. And when she finished, the room didn't just clap. It exhaled. Like we'd all been holding our breath and finally let it go. Later that night, as I was cleaning up, Emma came over and hugged me. "I'm glad we had a party," she said. "Me too," I whispered. "You know why?" she asked. "Why?" I smiled. "Because this time, we were in the center." She was right. For so long, I had believed our place was on the edges. Watching, waiting, hoping to be invited in. But now, here we were in the center of our own story. And then, as if the universe needed one last reminder of how far we'd come, I found a message in my inbox. It was from the Mentorship Summit team. They were launching a new youth leadership initiative focused on creative self-expression. And they wanted to name a scholarship in honor of someone who represented courage, growth, and voice. They asked if they could call it the Emma Carter Award for Brave Expression. I stared at the screen, speechless. Then I replied, simply, Yes. She'll be proud to know her voice made a difference. That night, after Emma fell asleep with her stuffed bunny tucked under her arm, I sat on the edge of her bed and whispered, "You did it, baby. You turned pain into something beautiful." She didn't stir, but I like to think the stars heard me. Maybe they even whispered back. This wasn't just about a slap, or a toxic sister, or cruel parents. It was about cycles. The ones we're born into, the ones we outgrow, and the ones we choose to end. And this was the end of ours. From here on out, our story wouldn't be written in fear or silence, but in songs, sketches, and moments that reminded us we belong. We are not too much. We are just enough. And our voices, especially the little ones, will always matter. Always. A few days after the celebration, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just my name written in neat cursive. I opened it slowly, expecting a final dig or another guilt-laced message from my mother. But instead, it was from my cousin, Mia, someone I hadn't seen in years. Inside, she'd written, "I saw the story unfold. I heard the audio. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to speak up back then. I'm trying now. Thank you for doing what none of us could." I read that line 3 times. Then I placed the card in a small wooden box, the one where I kept Emma's drawings, a ribbon from her first dance recital, and a copy of the song lyrics she'd written herself. I wasn't keeping it because I needed validation. I was keeping it because it reminded me that even quiet ripples reach far shores. That week, I was invited to speak not at a large conference, not for the spotlight, but at a local school's parent night. The principal, who had heard about our story through mutual friends, asked if I'd share a few words about advocacy and protecting children's emotional well-being. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't a professional speaker. I didn't have credentials or polished language, just a lived story. But maybe that was enough. So I stood in front of a small group of parents and said, "Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is not shout. It's to refuse to be quiet when someone needs your voice." Afterward, a woman with tired eyes and a kind smile came up to me. "My daughter's going through something like this," she said softly. "Thank you for showing me what standing up can look like." I hugged her. No words needed. Emma continued to blossom. She began writing short stories, mostly about magical creatures who found their voice in strange lands. Her therapist called it narrative healing. I just called it her brilliance. One of the stories was about a tiny mouse who sang in the middle of a thunderstorm, even though all the bigger animals told her to stop. In the end, it was her song that led them out of the storm. I asked her where she got the idea. She shrugged. "I just thought maybe people forget that small things can be really strong." I nodded. "They do, but you didn't forget." She smiled, proud. One evening, while we were cleaning up after dinner, I caught her humming again. No fear, no holding back. Just joy, pure, unfiltered joy. I leaned on the counter and watched her like it was the first time I'd really seen her. Not just my daughter, but a whole person. Resilient, radiant. Then came the unexpected. Vanessa emailed. Again. But this time, it wasn't angry. It wasn't even defensive. Just a short note. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I do know now that I was wrong. I hope Emma is okay. I hope you're okay." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. Not because I was still angry, but because some doors don't need reopening. Closure doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes, it's just peace. Mark reached out, too. He'd filed for separation. Quietly, respectfully. He said he realized that silence in the face of harm was still harm. That watching someone get hurt and doing nothing that had haunted him. "You taught me that accountability doesn't always come with yelling. Sometimes it's a quiet choice made in the right direction." I told him I respected his decision. And I meant it. People grow in different ways. Some take longer. Some never start. But when they do, when they really do, it's worth noticing. A few months later, the school Emma attended held a talent day. Nothing fancy. Just a little stage in the gym, paper stars on the walls, parents sitting on foldable chairs. When it was Emma's turn, she stepped onto that stage in a sparkly top and jeans, clutching a small microphone in both hands. She looked right at me and smiled. Then she sang. It wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration. Of self, of healing, of being unshaken. And I cried not from sadness, but from pride so deep it felt like warmth in my bones. I clapped with both hands and my whole heart. After the show, one of the other moms approached me. Your daughter, she said, with tears in her eyes. She reminded me of myself at that age. I forgot I used to sing, too. I smiled. Maybe it's time to start again. Later that night, Emma and I sat on the couch, legs tangled, popcorn between us. She looked up and said, You know what I like about our house, Mom? I turned. What? She grinned. Nobody ever tells me to be quiet here. I laughed. That's the rule, sweetheart. Loud hearts welcome. She thought for a moment, then nodded. Can we write that on the wall? And we did. The next morning, we took a marker and scribbled it above her desk in bold, crooked letters. Loud hearts welcome. I think that might be the truest thing I've ever written. Because this story, in the end, wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about destroying anyone's legacy. It was about building our own. One filled with music, with truth, and with the kind of love that never needs to be earned by silence. And if anyone ever asks me what changed, I'll say this. I stopped trying to fit into a family that only loved me quiet, and I started creating a life that celebrates every single note. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a family weekend gone wrong. It was about a mother who finally stood up not just for her daughter, but for the younger version of herself who had been silenced for far too long. We watched Rachel walk into a house filled with years of judgment, hierarchy, and hidden wounds. And we saw her leave with something far more powerful than revenge: clarity, courage, and her daughter's unshakable spirit still intact. We saw how one cruel moment, a slap, became the spark that exposed years of emotional neglect. We followed Rachel as she chose not to scream or fight back with anger, but instead used truth, quiet strength, and compassion to hold her ground. We saw how healing didn't come from confrontation, but from connection from the people who showed up, listened, and stood beside her when it mattered most. And most importantly, we saw how little Emma, a 6-year-old with a brave heart and a voice that refused to be silenced, became the reason a cycle of shame was finally broken. The core message here is this. You don't have to keep playing by the old rules just because they came from family. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to speak up, to say no, to draw new boundaries, especially when it means protecting the next generation from the same pain you had to survive. If this story spoke to you, if it reminded you of your own journey or someone you love, take a moment to comment below and share your experience. You never know who you might help feel seen. And if you want more real, powerful stories like this one, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because every time someone speaks up, it makes it just a little easier for the next person to do the same. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything.